Man, I tell you what, watching the NFL season is like watching your youngest kid or your dog get old, man. This season goes by so fast. We're already in week 5 and we're talking more PrizePicks plays for you. Looking at the Thursday night football game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Atlanta Falcons. My name is CJ Curry. If you're new to the channel and not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button now. It's a totally free thing for you to do. It helps me and others know that you're liking what I'm doing here. And also smash the like button while you're down there touching buttons. You might as well touch that like button. Leave a like for me. You guys have been killing those likes all NFL season, and I appreciate you so much for doing so. You might want to ring that bell as well so that anytime I drop a new piece of content here on the channel, you're alerted so you don't miss out on any potential value. Now, this game is not looking like one of my favorites or sexiest games that I've seen. Got these two teams. They're playing on a short week. Tampa Bay out in that sun. I was out in that sun watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat down my Philadelphia Eagles. And listen, they're a little banged up, man. The Bucs are dealing with a lot of injuries, especially at the wide receiver position. And they're going to be on the road playing Atlanta. Taking a look at this game here over on RotoWire, you can see this game has a total of about 44 points. Atlanta is just a 1.5 point favorite at home. So a decent total, decent amount of points expected to be scored between these two ball clubs. And the spread is 1.5, which means, hey, this game could really go either way, right? So without further ado, let's take a look at a few picks that I dug up over on PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks is still doing that promotion where if you play $5, they're going to give you $50. The way you take advantage of that is by going down to the description of today's video, clicking that special link, and using promo code CJ Curry when you make your first deposit. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. All right, so what do I have for this game? We're going to start with the visiting team, the away team, first and foremost. Talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As I mentioned before, they're going to be without a lot of their third and fourth and fifth string wide receivers. Mike Evans, their number 1 receiver, is also banged up, dealing with a leg or knee issue. I saw him limping around on the field on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. And so, we got a battered and bruised Buccaneers team taking on a division foe in the Atlanta Falcons. So, let's start with Mike Evans while we're talking about Evans. His fantasy score kind of jumped out at me. It's at 12.5 fantasy score if he's healthy enough to give it a go. His 12.5 fantasy score looked like it did have some value over here on PrizePicks. Now, when I say value, I mean that according to these projection models that I use, when we use the DraftKings projection models on Fantasy Labs and we use them on the Blitz, they're a lot higher than where PrizePicks has them at 12.5 fantasy score. So let's go take a look at those projections together. The first projection model is brought to you by RotoWire. RotoWire is fantastic. If you're not using RotoWire, there's a 2-day all access free pass down in the description of today's video. Check it out. And you can take RotoWire for a spin. But here's where they have him. They got it projected at 13.14 fantasy score. Now, he's gone over this in 2 out of the 4 games in which he has played so far this season. So things not looking too terrible there as far as this first projection. Let's go over to Sean Kerner, one of the most accurate NFL fantasy football guys in the business. He actually might be the most accurate. He's got Mike Evans projected for 14.26 fantasy score according to his projection model. So that's nearly 2 points higher than where he's at on PrizePicks. And then last but not least, let's go over to the Blitz by Derek Carty. This one is the most favorable projection, we'll call it, of the ones that we're looking at here. 16.38 projected fantasy points for Mike Evans. So the Blitz is really liking Mike Evans to clear the 12.5 fantasy score. He's probably going to need to catch a touchdown in order to cover this, but that's not out of the question here going up against Atlanta. His matchup is probably going to be A.J. Terrell of the Atlanta Falcons, and might see some shadow coverage here according to our matchup chart, but he does get a 1.23 matchup advantage score, so that's not too bad going up against AJ Terrell. We know Mike Evans is pretty much matchup proof at this point. He's got the size, he's got the speed, and it's just a matter of if he'll catch that touchdown or not, because that's probably going to be the difference between him going over or under on his fantasy score. So that's the first one. As I mentioned, stay on top of the injury news as we enter into Thursday Night Football. We're not sure if Mike Evans is going to be 100% healthy or if he's going to give it a go or not. So this one's got a little bit of risk involved, as do really all of the picks, but that goes without saying. We're gambling here. We're gambling here. There's always a risk. Speaking of a risk, let's take a look at this next one. It's going to be Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm looking at his receiving yards at 8.5 because I'm seeing some very favorable projections for Bucky Irving to go over 8.5 receiving yards, despite the fact that he's actually lower than 8.5 receiving yards on a couple of other sites. I'm just thinking with all of the injuries to the Buccaneers wide receiver room, somebody's going to have to step up and maybe see a little bit more of running back involvement. Guys like Bucky Irving, Rachaad White potentially catching, a couple more targets, couple more balls, and maybe Baker's checking down a little bit more to the likes of Irving and White. But taking a look here at the projections for Bucky Irving, if we go over to the projections on Fantasy Labs, again, these are Sean Kerner and Chris Raybon combining here, so it's like a consensus projection. You got Bucky Irving at the top of the list here as far as value goes. He's projected for about 11.9 receiving yards on a line of just 8.5 over on PrizePicks. But again, a little bit of concern here because there are sports books out there that have him at 6.5 and 7.5. So we are paying a premium price here. So we're really just relying on these projections to be right on Bucky Irving going over 8.5 receiving yards. So about 12 projected receiving yards. That's Chris Raybon and Sean Kerner's combined projection for Bucky Irving. When we take a look at where Bucky Irving's at over on RotoWire, another favorable projection for Bucky Irving to go over 8.5 receiving yards, 10.59 projected receiving yards for Irving on RotoWire. So that's two projections that like him to go over 8.5. And then we'll go back over to the Blitz and check out Bucky Irving over there. And they've got Bucky Irving projected for a nice little projection of, what are we looking at, 16 receiving yards? So almost double what his line is set at 8.5. And here's how Bucky's performed thus far on this number. We're looking at Outlier here. Outlier.bet. Down in the description of the video, you get a 7-day all-access free pass to Outlier. Definitely check that out if you're interested. But yeah, Bucky Irving has cleared the receiving yards line in 2 out of the 4 games in which he's appeared. He's got a little bit of a pattern, a seesaw pattern going, right? Cleared in week 1, had none in week 2 against Detroit, came back against Denver with 14 there, and just 6 receiving yards against Philly. So who knows? Maybe this week he goes over again and continues this seesaw pattern that we're seeing. But yeah, Bucky Irving definitely capable of clearing 8.5 receiving yards as he has done in 2 out of the 4 games that he's appeared in thus far. As far as the matchup goes, Atlanta ranks about 12th in terms of receiving yards allowed, but when you take a look at where they are in terms of receiving yards allowed against running backs, they rank 11th, so not the greatest matchup in the world, at least not on paper, but still very early in the season, and we're still gaining and learning new insights and information about all these players and these teams. But that's one, like I said, that has a little bit of risk just because it is lower on some of your favorite sports books. Let's go one more Tampa Bay Buccaneer play, and that's going to be the kicker. Chase McLaughlin over 1.5 field goal makes. This guy has been pretty solid for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going all the way back to last season and including this season. And he's got a matchup here against the Atlanta Falcons, a team who is we'll call them a bend, don't break. In other words, they'll let you get down to the red zone, but then they kind of stiffen up and then they don't let you get in the red zone at a very high clip. Pretty good red zone defense, holding teams to a lot of field goal attempts and a lot of field goal makes thus far early on in the season. And Chase McLaughlin is more than happy to take those field goal attempts and those field goal makes. I think we've got a nice little play here because they're going to be playing indoors in Atlanta, so no weather concerns to really be worried about, no wind blowing, no rain, none of that slippery field mess. And like I said, the matchup against Atlanta just looks really good on paper. So let's go back over here to RotoWire. This was one of the projections that I saw here with Chase McLaughlin going over 1.5 field goal makes. They got him at 1.6. That's not a super high projection, but it is a little bit higher than 1.5. In case you were wondering, the Blitz, it had Chase McLaughlin right at 1.5 field goal makes. So not really an advantage one way or another, but nonetheless, McLaughlin in a pretty good spot here. Let's go take a look at what he's done this season at this 1.5 field goal make number. Looking at 2024 here, we're back on outlier. When we scroll down, take a look at the game logs from this season, you can see that he's gone over in 3 out of 4 contests. 3 out of 4 so far, and going over 1.5 field goal makes this season. So 75% hit rate. Now, when we go back to last season and take a look at what Mr. Chase McLaughlin did there, pretty consistent at going over 1.5 field goal makes. He actually did so in 68% of the games in which he appeared. So 13 out of 19 games that he started, he went over 1.5 field goal makes. And that includes head-to-head against Atlanta, where he was 2 for 2 against the Falcons, going over 1.5 field goal makes against them in both meetings from last season. So yeah, Chase McLaughlin should be in a pretty good spot here. As I mentioned, I don't know if you could see this on the screen. Field goals allowed, Atlanta ranks 32nd. In other words, that's a bad ranking for Atlanta. A good ranking if you're Chase McLaughlin and you're looking to make at least 2 field goals. And then we could also take a look at how Chase has done back to the 2023 season on the road. And actually on the road, he kicked a field goal, two or more field goals in 70% of the road games that they played in, 7 out of 10. So he actually was making more field goals on the road than whenever he was playing at home. 1.8 on the road was his field goal make average. So I don't know. Like I said, short week for the Bucs. Maybe they struggle to put the ball in the end zone. Maybe they're moving it up and down the field, but the red zone efficiency just isn't there with some of the injuries that they're dealing with. And you might see Chase McLaughlin trotted out there for some field goal makes. So that could be another option for you to take if you're looking for some PrizePicks plays. So let's swing things over to the Atlanta Falcons side of things, and we'll look at Drake London. Now, I don't take a lot of these style props, but in this case, I'm willing to roll the dice, as it is one of those games where we're going to have to kind of get out of our comfort zone, get out of those passing and receiving yards and rushing yards, because there's just not a lot of value on any of those props this week. But Drake London under 21.5 longest reception looked pretty interesting to me. And here's why. When we take a look at Drake London, this season, he is 0 for 4, or 4 for 4, however you want to look at it. In other words, he has not had a reception thus far of 20 or more yards, let alone 22 or more yards. So he is staying under his longest reception number of 21.5 in 4 straight games to start the season. So Atlanta's just not pushing the ball downfield a whole lot, I'm guessing. Maybe Kirk Cousins just doesn't have the arm that he used to have. As far as the matchup for Drake London, he's going up against Jamel Dean. That's probably who he will see the most of in terms of coverage, but he does kind of line up all over the field. He spends 36% of the time in the left wide receiver position, 31% of the time in the slot wide receiver position, and 33% of the time in the right wide receiver position. So Atlanta's doing a good job early on this season of moving him all over the field. But being that the most of his snaps are coming from the left wide receiver spot, that means he's probably going to be matched up against Jamel Dean more often than not. But you can kind of see the advantage score for him is under 1.0, so not a great advantage matchup. And then you take a look at the actual matchup score that they have for him, which is a minus 0.17, which is not very sexy, at least not on paper. Outside of Jamel Dean, he'll probably see the likes of Zion McCollum and Tyke Smith as well. So it just kind of depends on who's healthy, because Ray McLeod may not play for Atlanta, and that might change where Drake London lines up on offense. So we're looking at the under, though, on the 21.5 longest reception for Drake London. If we go back to last season, this was a number that he didn't go over a whole lot. I mean, kind of just taking a look at some of the games here. You know, he stayed under 21.5 in a majority of his games, 9 out of 16 games in which he appeared. So that's a 56% hit rate. As far as some of the more advanced stats for him, you can go over to the receiving yards if you're using Outlier like I am, and you can go down here and take a look at like some longest reception type stuff. This was going back to last season. You could see that his longest reception average was about 21.4, putting him under his line of 21.5. You could kind of see where the air yard share is as well. And yards after catch. not a big yak guy, especially not this season. If we look at the 2024 games, the yards after catch, not really there. Only 3 yak there, 6 yak against Philly, 11 yak against New Orleans, and then you could see against Kansas City, it looks like he had just 30. Well, he had 30 yards after catch against the Chiefs in that game. So, yeah, just a little bit more information on it for those of you who are still kind of wondering what you should do with Drake London. A lot of the projection models had Drake London going under 21 or under his receiving yard total as well. So that kind of makes me like the 21.5 longest reception for the under as well. But kind of an ugly game, kind of an ugly slate for Thursday Night Football. Those are just a few picks that I kind of dug up. Not sure what's going to happen. Nobody ever knows what's going to happen, so we're taking our best guess at it. I would probably go light on these and go light on the Thursday Night Football game in general. But you guys let me know down in the comment section below. Are you liking any of these more than the other? Hating them? Are you going to be fading them, reversing them? I always like to get your thoughts and opinions on these picks that we discuss in these videos. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the support. And if you run the likes up high enough, guys, you know I'll come back for a Sunday football video for you guys to take care of you for the rest of the Week 5 action. Appreciate you. See you soon. Bye.